The morning was gray and sleepy in downtown Chicago. Light rain tapped gently on the tall glass windows of Harrison & Cole, one of the most respected consulting firms in the city. The lobby gleamed like a museum, marble floors, tall white columns, and glass elevators that silently whisked people into their busy lives. Receptionist Linda Myers sat behind her curved oak desk, typing an email and sipping her lukewarm coffee when she heard the soft, unexpected sound of little sneakers squeaking on the lobby floor. She looked up and did a double take. Standing there, just past the glass doors, was a tiny girl, no more than 4 years old. Her brown hair was tied in two uneven ponytails, a pink hoodie hung off her shoulders, and in her hands she clutched a wrinkled manila folder almost half her size. She looked around the busy lobby with wide eyes, her small feet unsure, but her expression strangely calm. Linda stood up. "Sweetheart, are you lost?" The girl took a step forward. She had no umbrella, her hoodie was a little damp from the rain, and she was shivering slightly. Still, she didn't cry. She marched toward the reception desk like she'd practiced it in her head 100 times. When she got close enough, she stood on her tiptoes and placed the folder gently on the counter. "I'm here for my mommy's job," she whispered. Linda froze. I'm sorry? What do you mean?" The little girl blinked. Her voice was soft but clear. "My mommy doesn't have her job anymore. She cried last night. I heard her say she messed up. But she didn't. She's the best mommy in the world. She works so hard. So I came. Maybe you can give it back to her?" Linda's hand hovered above the keyboard, unsure of what to say. The lobby, which had been buzzing a few seconds ago, seemed to fall into slow motion. A few people paused to look at the scene. Linda slowly opened the folder. Inside were a few coffee-stained papers, a resume, a reference letter, and a crayon drawing of a tall building with two stick figures holding hands. At the top, in block letters, was written, "Me and Mommy at work." Linda swallowed the lump, rising in her throat. "What's your name, honey?" "Layla," she replied. "Layla Khan." Linda nodded slowly. She had heard that last name before. Nadia Khan. She was a temp, quiet, reliable, always early. She'd been laid off just a few days ago when the company restructured one of its admin departments. The girl clutched the folder again. "I'm not leaving until you read it. That's what Mommy does at interviews. She says you should always finish what you start." Something about those words so grown-up, yet innocent, melted the receptionist's composure. Linda took a breath and reached for the phone. "Mr. Carter," she said when the line clicked, her voice tight. "You'll want to come down here. Now, trust me." Scene cut. On the 34th floor, behind glass walls and a steel-gray desk, CEO Jason Carter looked up from his files. The call from Linda had been strange. She never called unless it was serious. "Sir, there's a little girl down here, asking to apply for her mother's job." Jason Carter raised an eyebrow. "A little girl?" He adjusted his watch, stood, and headed for the elevator. The elevator dinged softly as it opened into the lobby. All eyes turned as Jason Carter, the 43-year-old CEO of Harrison & Cole, stepped out. Impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, tall, broad-shouldered, with steely gray eyes that rarely betrayed emotion, he looked every bit the powerful executive he was known to be. He walked toward the reception desk with his usual measured steps, already preparing to dismiss whatever distraction this was, until he saw her, a little girl, sitting on the leather waiting bench, legs swinging back and forth, still holding tightly onto the folder. She was wet from the rain, her hoodie drooping over her small frame. But her eyes, those big brown eyes, were looking around the lobby. With quiet courage, Jason slowed down. "Is this her?" he asked Linda under his breath. Linda nodded. She came here alone, said she's here for her mommy's job. Jason blinked. It didn't make sense. The girl looked like she belonged in a daycare center, not a corporate skyscraper. He stepped closer. Hey there, he said gently. What's your name? The little girl looked up. Her voice came out in a whisper, but it was clear and brave. Layla, are you the boss man? Jason suppressed a smile. I guess you could say that. I'm Jason, she nodded. I came to ask for my mommy's job back. Jason crouched down to her eye level. Your mommy worked here? Her name's Nadia Khan. She worked really hard. Even when she was tired, even when she was sick, she smiled. She said this place was special, but she lost her job last week, and last night, she cried in the bathroom. I heard her. Jason inhaled deeply. That name, Nadia Khan, did ring a bell. She'd been in one of the admin support teams they trimmed last week during the restructuring. He hadn't personally signed off on each name. HR had handled most of it, but he remembered reading her file. Hard-working, never missed a deadline. 0 complaints. No idea why she was let go. He looked at the folder Layla was holding. What's in there? He asked softly. She held it out. Her papers. And my picture. Jason opened it. The resume was modest but clean. 1 reference. 1 outdated certificate. And a hand-drawn picture. A stick figure, mom and daughter holding hands in front of a tall glass building labeled Mommy's Work. Jason's chest tightened. He hadn't felt something like that in years. Something real. Raw. He looked back at Layla. Why did you come instead of her? Layla shrugged. Because when grown-ups give up, someone little has to try. Jason looked at Linda again, then stood. Get HR now, and tell them to pull Nadia Khan's file. 5 minutes later, Jason was in the conference room with 2 HR executives. Why was she cut? He asked, pointing at Nadia's file. One of them, a young woman named Marissa, flipped through the notes. Her contract was temporary. When we downsized the support team, we let go of the tongue first. Was there any performance issue? None at all. Actually, Marissa paused. Her supervisor gave her glowing feedback. Jason leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. And we let her go, just like that. He turned toward the glass, where Layla was now coloring quietly on a chair outside the room. He had been raised in the system. His mother had worked 3 jobs while raising him alone. He still remembered the day she cried on the kitchen floor when she was fired unfairly. He had vowed he'd never let his company treat people like that. But here it was, slipping through the cracks. He tapped the table. Bring her mother in, today. Scene cut. Meanwhile, in a modest apartment 20 blocks away, Nadia Khan was washing dishes in silence. Her eyes were tired. Her body ached. She hadn't told Layla everything, but she knew her daughter had sensed the pain. She turned off the faucet when her phone rang. Hello? A pause, then a voice that made her heart skip. Miss Khan? This is Jason Carter, CEO of Harrison & Cole. Her legs nearly gave out. I'm sorry? Did something happen? Yes. Your daughter came to my office this morning to apply for your job. The plate in her hand slipped into the sink. She gripped the counter. Oh no. I didn't know she must have Mr. Carter. I'm so sorry. I didn't. Jason's voice was calm. But there was something else in it too. Softness. She's fine. In fact, she's sitting here calmly, drawing. But I'd like you to come in. Now, if you're able. Nadia didn't know what this meant. Her hand shook as she grabbed her purse and keys. Still wet with soap. As she stepped into the hallway, one thought pounded in her chest. What did Layla do? Nadia Khan stood frozen outside the glass doors of Harrison & Cole, the same building she had walked into every morning for 6 months, until last week. when she was quietly let go with a polite thank you for your service. She hadn't expected to ever come back. Especially not like this. Her heart pounded as she pushed through the doors, her hands clammy. She hadn't even had time to change, just a plain scarf wrapped around her head, an old overcoat, and rain-speckled flats. She felt underdressed, overwhelmed, and afraid. But then her eyes landed on the tiny figure sitting in the lounge, quietly coloring with a borrowed pen and a notepad. Layla. She gasped out. The little girl turned around and smiled. "Hi, Mommy. The boss man said you should come. I told you he was nice." Nadia ran over, knelt down, and wrapped her arms around her. "Sweetheart, how did you even get here? Alone?" "I took the same bus you used to take to work. I had my piggy bank money. I only dropped a little juice on my hoodie, that's why it smells funny." Nadia's eyes filled with tears. Before she could say more, a deep voice spoke gently behind her. "Ms. Khan?" She stood up and turned to face Jason Carter. She had never met him in person. Only seen him from afar during company town halls or in the monthly internal newsletters. Now here he was, tall, calm, strangely kind-eyed, looking at her like he was studying a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit, but mattered. I'm so sorry," she began quickly. "I had no idea she must have. Please don't think she was trying to cause trouble." Jason raised a hand. "She didn't cause trouble. She reminded me what this place is supposed to stand for." He gestured gently toward a side hallway. "Would you mind stepping into my office? Just the two of us." Inside the CEO's office, Nadia sat in a sleek leather chair across from Jason's desk, hands folded tightly in her lap. She still wasn't sure what this was. A warning? A legal issue? A lecture? But when Jason spoke, it was gentle. "Nadia." "May I call you Nadia?" She nodded silently. "I've reviewed your file. You were let go in a sweeping restructure that, quite frankly, we should have handled more thoughtfully." "I understand," she said quickly. "Tom, go first." "I didn't expect," he interrupted. "But you should have expected better. From us, from me." She blinked. "You were rated as one of the most efficient support staff members we had." Jason continued. "No delays, no complaints, always polite. Your manager gave you a handwritten thank you note on your last day. Did you get it?" Nadia nodded. "I cried when I read it." Jason paused, then leaned forward slightly. "I also want to say something about your daughter." Now Nadia's nerves were back. "I didn't tell her to come, I swear. I know, she told us. She also told us she heard you crying last night." Her face flushed with embarrassment. "I didn't mean for her to see that," she whispered. "I was just scared." Jason's voice softened. "She walked into my building and asked for your job back. Said someone little had to try when grown-ups gave up." Nadia looked down, her eyes now full. Jason continued. "That little girl changed how I view everything we've been doing lately." He stood up, walked to the window for a moment, then turned back around. "I'd like to offer you a full-time position, permanent, not temp, admin operations officer, with benefits, flexible hours, and childcare support." Nadia stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, voice trembling. Jason smiled faintly. "Because I think we fired the wrong person. And because a 4-year-old girl reminded me that behind every resume is a reason worth fighting for." Tears fell freely now from Nadia's eyes. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying not to sob. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Jason offered a hand. "Welcome back, Nadia." Outside in the lobby, Layla was still coloring when her mother returned. Her face lit up. "Did you get it, Mommy?" Nadia bent down and hugged her tightly. "Yes, baby, I did." "So we can buy cereal again?" Nadia laughed through tears. "Yes, we can buy all the cereal you want." Just then, Jason walked out too. Layla stood and walked up to him. "Are you still the boss man?" he chuckled. "I think you're more of a boss than me," she grinned. "Mommy says I talk too much." Jason bent down and looked into her eyes. "You talk just enough to change lives." It had been just 3 weeks since Nadia rejoined Harrison and Cole, this time not as a temp, but as a full-time admin operations officer with her own desk, nameplate, and a glowing welcome email from the CEO himself. But something was different. Not just in her position, but in the air around her. Where earlier people had walked past her like she was invisible, now they nodded, smiled, paused to ask, "Aren't you the one whose daughter?" She'd smile modestly and nod. Yes, that was Layla. The legend of the tiny job applicant had spread like quiet fire across the building. No one shared the story officially, but whispers moved fast in offices, and everyone had their own version. A 4-year-old girl walked in and melted Jason Carter's heart. The CEO came down to the lobby himself for a child. He rehired the mother the same day. But what no one said out loud was this: Jason Carter had changed. The once emotionally distant CEO had started walking the halls more often. He smiled more. He asked junior staff about their kids. He even visited the tiny company daycare twice a week, and he always paused when he saw Nadia. Sometimes it was just a glance through glass office walls. Sometimes a brief check-in, but one Friday afternoon, it turned into something more. The coffee that wasn't a coffee Nadia had just finished organizing. A messy spreadsheet when she got a message from the front desk. "Mr. Carter would like to see you for 5 minutes in conference room B." Her heart skipped a beat. Had she messed something up? She grabbed her notepad and walked quickly to the room. But when she stepped in, there was no boardroom meeting. Just a small table, 2 chairs, and to her surprise, coffee and muffins laid out. Jason stood at the window, hands in pockets. "Oh," Nadia hesitated. "Was this meant for the exec team?" He turned around, a little smile playing on his lips. "No, it's for you." "I thought you could use a quiet break." Nadia blinked. "I thank you, but why me?" He gestured toward the chair. They both sat. "Because," he began, "I've spent years building systems, policies, and performance charts, but you and your daughter reminded me there are people behind every number." She looked at him carefully. "You really mean that, don't you?" He nodded. When Layla walked into the lobby, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Someone fighting not for power or money, but for love, for dignity, for her mother. Nadia smiled softly. "I thought I failed her. That night when she heard Emmy cry, I felt like the worst mom in the world." Jason's expression turned serious. "You didn't fail her. You raised a girl brave enough to walk into a skyscraper alone and speak for someone she loves. That's not failure. That's legacy." The words hit her like a warm wave. No one had ever said something like that to her. Not even her late husband. There was a pause. "How did you become this?" she asked gently. "A CEO, and still this human?" Jason looked out the window. Rain dotted the glass. "My mom cleaned offices for a living. She raised me alone. There were nights I heard her cry too. I swore when I was old enough I'd build something better. Something where good people didn't get stepped over." He turned back to her. "But I lost sight of it until Layla brought it back." They shared a long look. One of those rare silences that says more than words. "She thinks you're a superhero, you know," Nadia whispered. Jason laughed. "I think she's wrong. I think she's not." Another pause. Then he asked, "May I take you both out for dinner?" Nothing formal. "Just pizza, maybe?" Nadia hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "Only if Layla gets to pick the toppings." Jason grinned. "Deal." That Saturday night, Layla insisted on sitting between them. She ordered a small pizza with pineapple and pickles. Jason grimaced but ate it anyway. Layla asked Jason questions like, "Do you have a dog? Can you fire bad guys? Why do you wear such boring suits?" And Jason answered everyone with a laugh, with patience, and with a kind sparkle Nadia hadn't seen before. At one point, Layla fell asleep in the booth, head on her mom's lap. Jason looked at the child, then at Nadia. "She's everything," Nadia nodded, stroking her daughter's hair. "She saved me more times than I can count." Jason whispered, almost more to himself, "She saved me too." It was supposed to be just one dinner, but one dinner turned into another, and then into weekly Saturday lunches. Sometimes it was sandwiches in the park, sometimes fries on the office rooftop, sometimes cupcakes in the break room while Layla colored on legal notepads. And every time, Jason made sure to be there. Quietly, genuinely. He didn't bring a guard. He didn't act like a CEO. He simply showed up with a warm smile, rolled up sleeves, and stories from his childhood that Layla listened to with wide eyes. "So you really didn't have a TV?" she asked one day. Jason chuckled. "Nope. Just a radio and lots of imagination." "That's sad," she said. "But kind of cool." Nadia sat nearby, watching this unlikely bond blossom, a billionaire executive and her little girl, laughing about peanut butter and jelly and old comic books. But somewhere deep inside, she felt something else blooming too, something she was too scared to name. A small shift in a tall building, the entire office began to notice. Jason Carter, the once intimidating CEO, had become approachable, lighter. He smiled more, took more interest in his people. HR policies were reviewed. A new family flex program launched. Daycare was upgraded. A lactation room was installed for new mothers. Emergency leave was now protected by an internal fund. People started calling it the Layla effect. But Jason knew the truth. It wasn't just the girl. It was her mother. One quiet evening, it was a Thursday evening when it happened. Most of the building had emptied out. Nadia was working late to help with a report. Jason was still upstairs, caught in back-to-back meetings. He texted her. "Still here? I'm ordering Thai. Want to split something?" She replied, "Only if I can steal all the noodles." He laughed. And 15 minutes later, they were sitting across from each other in a quiet corner office, eating from paper boxes and watching the skyline turn orange and purple. "You know," Nadia said, "I never thought someone like you would talk to someone like me." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" "You single quotes do you. I'm just someone who types fast and tries to raise a decent human." Jason leaned forward, setting his box down. "Nadia, you don't realize, do you? You walked into this building every day with dignity. You carried your daughter and your broken heart and still smiled. That's more strength than I've seen in boardrooms full of men with 10-figure bank accounts." She looked away, tears welling unexpectedly. "I wasn't trying to be strong. I just didn't have a choice." Jason's voice dropped. "Sometimes the ones who don't choose strength end up being the strongest of all." There was a silence. Heavy, meaningful. Then he asked softly, "Can I say something? Maybe a little crazy?" She looked at him, heart fluttering. "Try me. I've met investors, presidents, celebrities. But I've never felt more seen than I do when I'm sitting across from you." The words hung in the air like electricity. Nadia didn't know what to say, but she didn't have to, because at that exact moment, Layla came bursting through the side door, escorted by Linda, the receptionist. "Mommy, you forgot your phone and I drew something for Mr. Bossman." Jason knelt down as she handed him a folded sheet of paper. On it was a crayon drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands in front of the same tall building. But this time it wasn't labeled Mommy's work. It said, Our place. Jason stared at the drawing for a long time. You drew this? Yup, Layla beamed. It's me, you and Mommy. I added you this time. Jason looked at Nadia. Her eyes met his. For the first time, they both saw it. This wasn't just a friendship. This wasn't just kindness. This was a beginning. The ripple effect. By the next week, something surprising happened. Jason called a company-wide town hall meeting. Today, he said to hundreds of employees gathered online and in person, I want to introduce something personal, something important. Behind him, a large screen displayed a single sentence, the Layla Fund empowering working mothers through emergency support, childcare grants, and career reintegration. He continued, this is dedicated to the little girl who reminded me what strength really looks like and to her mother, who lives that strength every day. Applause thundered. Nadia sat in the back of the room, stunned, moved and wiping away silent tears, and Lila, sitting beside her, whispered, told you he was nice. It had been 8 months since the day Layla walked into Harrison and Cole with a wrinkled folder and the bravest heart in the world. The girl who simply wanted her mommy to stop crying had unknowingly rewritten 3 lives and started a ripple that continued to spread. In the company, the Layla Fund was now fully functional. Over 60 mothers had already benefited women who'd lost jobs, struggled with daycare, or needed emergency support. They were being coached, retrained, and rehired into meaningful positions. Jason had changed the firm's policy handbook. With his own hands, no legal team, no assistant. He said, I don't want this written in legalese. I want it written in love. And now Harrison and Cole was quietly becoming famous, not just for consulting, but for compassion. People outside the company started noticing too. News blogs, HR magazines. Then a national morning show called and requested an interview. Jason said he'd agree. Only if 2 other people sat beside him. The interview that broke the internet. The set was cozy. Lights soft. Cameras rolling. The host smiled at the 3 guests seated together. Jason Carter, the well-known CEO, Nadia Khan, former temp now department head, and a little girl sitting on Jason's lap with her arms around his neck. So Layla, the host asked, leaning forward, how did all of this start? Layla grinned, leaned toward the mic, and said clearly, I just didn't want my mommy to be sad anymore. The studio went quiet. Even the camera crew teared up. Jason kissed the top of her head and said softly, and that one act of love changed everything. The video went viral. Millions of views. Comments from around the world. This little girl taught more in 5 minutes than most people do in a lifetime. The CEO every company needs. We don't need superheroes. We need moms and kids like these. But behind the screens, beyond the applause, something more private, more precious, was blooming. An evening that changed everything. It was a quiet Sunday evening. Jason had invited Nadia and Lila to his home for dinner. Not the grand mansion outside the city, but the little house he kept closer to the office. The one with real furniture, real warmth, and books on every shelf. They ate on the porch. Chicken pasta, garlic bread, apple pie. Layla, exhausted from playing with Jason's dog, had fallen asleep on the couch, hugging a stuffed giraffe Jason had bought for her birthday. Nadia stood by the doorway, arms folded, watching her daughter sleep. Jason walked up beside her, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. She belongs here, he said quietly. So do you. Nadia turned, startled. Jason. He looked at her, no grand speech, no big moment, just simple honesty. I don't know what to call this. I've never felt it before. But every time I see you, I feel calm. Every time I hear her laugh, I feel whole. She lowered her eyes, heart pounding. You don't have to say anything now, he added. But I know this. My life was full before you. But now it has meaning." Nadia looked up, tears in her eyes. "Jason, we don't come from the same world. That's why we fit," he said. "Your world taught me what mine was missing." There was a pause. Then she reached up, took his hand, and whispered, "We've already built something together. We just didn't name it yet." He smiled. "How about family?" 1 year later, a private garden, close friends, warm lights hanging from trees. Layla ran ahead, tossing flower petals with joy as Nadia walked down the aisle, not in a fancy dress but a simple ivory gown, her hair pinned with jasmine. Jason waited under a floral arch, smiling as if nothing else in the world existed. When Layla reached him, she tugged his suit and whispered, "You're not the boss man anymore." Jason knelt down. "No?" She shook her head, grinning. "You're the daddy man now." The entire gathering laughed and cried together. Nadia reached the altar, tears in her eyes. Jason took her hand and said softly, "This is the best deal I've ever signed." Epilogue. A desk, a frame, a legacy back at Harrison and Cole in Jason's new office. There's a photo on his desk. 3 people, 1 skyscraper, and a crayon drawing behind them that says, "Our place." And just below it, a tiny plaque that reads, "Sometimes the bravest voice comes from the smallest heart." The end.